I still remember the sound of silverware against china when my father cleared his throat. Thanksgiving had always been his stage. The turkey was carved only after he spoke. Business updates came before gratitude. Even as adults, my brothers and I slipped into the same roles we'd played growing up. Daniel sat closest to Dad, eager to agree with whatever came next. Mark leaned back with the confidence of someone who had never questioned where his future would come from. I stayed near the end of the table, saying little. It wasn't resentment anymore. It was habit. For years, I had worked outside the family company. Dad called it my detour. My brothers called it proof that I wasn't committed enough. They never asked what I was actually building. Dad placed his wineglass down and smiled. I finalized the sale of the family firm. The room erupted with surprise. $80 million, he said proudly. Daniel whistled. Mark laughed. That's incredible. Dad looked directly at me. I decided to liquidate instead of passing the company down. He paused just long enough to make sure everyone was listening. You get zero. My brothers exchanged satisfied looks. It wasn't really about money. It was about confirmation. In their minds, Dad had finally declared who mattered. I felt every pair of eyes waiting for a reaction. Instead, I asked one question. Who's the buyer? Dad smiled even wider. Vanguard Capital. He sounded proud of himself. They moved quickly. Strong offer. I couldn't help smiling. Dad. He raised an eyebrow. I own Vanguard. Silence arrived so suddenly it almost felt loud. Daniel laughed first. Good one. Mark shook his head, still making denoid. This isn't the time. It isn't a joke, I said quietly. I reached for my phone. Our closing call starts in 3 minutes. Nobody spoke. The phone vibrated exactly on schedule. I answered. Hello, a familiar voice greeted me. Good afternoon. Everyone from legal is present. We're ready to complete the transition once you confirm. I placed the call on speaker. The lead attorney continued. As majority owner of Vanguard Capital, your approval is required before we release the final authorization. No one at the table moved. The attorney continued outlining transition steps. The acquisition agreement included employee protections, supplier commitments, and governance changes. Operational authority would transfer immediately after execution. My father's expression changed, not because he had lost money, he had already received it. Because he suddenly understood something else. He no longer controlled what happened next. When the attorney asked for final confirmation, I answered calmly. Proceed. Confirmed, came the reply. The transaction is now complete. The call ended. For several seconds, only the ticking kitchen clock filled the room. Dad finally spoke. You never told me. You never asked. It wasn't meant to sound sharp. It simply happened to be true. Years earlier, after leaving the family business, I had joined a small investment firm. I spent long nights learning industries Dad dismissed as temporary trends. Eventually, I invested, then acquired ownership over time with partners who cared more about results than family names. When the opportunity to purchase our old company appeared, I insisted on an independent review. The numbers worked. The emotions didn't matter. Dad looked exhausted. I thought you walked away. I did. I thought you gave up. I built something different. Daniel stared at the table. So, what happens to us? I answered honestly. The same performance reviews as everyone else. No threats, no promises. Just the policy every employee would receive. For the first time in years, nobody argued. Dinner continued in fragments. Conversations drifted toward ordinary things. The pie, the weather, football. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. When I left that evening, Dad walked me to the front door. I underestimated you, I nodded. I know. He seemed ready to say something else. Maybe an apology, maybe an explanation. Neither came. As I drove home, I realized the acquisition hadn't given me the thing I had wanted most as a younger man. It couldn't create respect where understanding had been missing for decades. But it did something quieter. It freed me from waiting for permission to believe my own worth. That was worth far more than any inheritance.